All right. Hello. Welcome everyone to our group today. We're going to do introductions before we get started. And then after we do our introductions, we're going to go over some things and some information about pre-post tests online, where to follow us on Instagram. So I am Miss Fennell.
I am J Boss, Program Director.
I'm Stephanie White, Program Director as well.
All right. Yeah. So we're just going to go over confidentiality for everyone on this call. All of the program directors and adults on this call are mandated reporters, which means what you say in here will stay here unless someone's going to hurt you, you want to hurt yourself, or you give us permission to tell it with a shared adult, or yeah. So we just have some confidentiality things that we have to go over. So we want you to feel free to share, but just know some things that might come up, we, are mandated reporters.
Well, thank you for that, Kanai. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And today we're going to be talking about love languages. So my first question for the girls that are on the call is, what is a love language? And as always, feel free to unmute your mic and answer the questions, or if it makes you comfortable, then type it in the chat box. So what do you think, or in your own definition, what would you say is a love language?
I would say a love language is kind of like a way to show your affection to somebody. I don't really know much about love languages.
Well, good thing you're here, because we're going to talk about love languages today, but that was actually a really good answer. So a love language is the way in which an individual gives and receives love. So today you're going to be learning about your love language, and because learning like a partner's or even your friends or your family's love language will help to create stronger bonds with each other, and also allow for better communication within the relationships that you have. So CW, I know you said you don't know much about the love languages, but for the other girls who are on the call, can you take a guess of what the 5 love languages might be?
I said that I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Well, I will tell y'all the 5 love languages. So the 5 love languages are physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, and acts of service. So those are the 5 love languages that we're going to focus on throughout this call today.
And with that, you might need a piece of paper or a pen, piece of paper, pen, whatever you have. You can type this in the chat box. So I'm going to give you a prompt. So what I want you to do is think about the 5 love languages we just mentioned. And then I want you to think about what love language you fit to. So like we said, the 5 love languages are physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, and acts of services. So out of all these 5 love languages, which one do you think you identify with more? And we'll go more into details about the type and what they are, but just guessing, which one would you think you fall under? And I'll put all this in the chat box. So we're going to take like a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll move on and answer some more questions. And I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next part, which is think of someone close to you, whether that's a friend, a family member, significant other, and then write down what languages you think that person, love languages you think that person identifies with. So you have yourself, pick which one you think you are, and then pick someone close to you in your life and guess which love language style they are. All right, so if you're still in the chat box, that's fine. I'm writing mine down as well. And now Miss Stephanie is going to go into more details about the types of love languages.
Hello, everyone. So before I move on, make sure you, like Ms. Fennell said, either write those down or remember what you put in the chat box, because we're going to circle back to it at the end so that everything kind of connects together. So I just don't forget what you put for yourself and what you put for someone else. So now, yeah, I'm going to break down the 5 love languages. So this part is more geared toward your significant other or your partner or your friend or your sister or your parents. It's not really geared toward yourself for this part. However, you could always spin it that way if you wanted to. So the first one I have is physical touch. And so before I tell you my definition, can anyone either unmute your mic or write it in the chat box? What do you think the definition of physical touch is as it relates to the 5 love languages? So SW said like hugging or touching. Yes, good. I think you know you're close. So physical touch is the physical presence that reminds the other of your accessibility to them. So basically, if you're sitting on the couch next to them and you hold their hand or you touch their arm, like it just reminds that person that you're there. Maybe you're not saying anything or doing anything, but your physical touch calms them or helps them because it reminds them that your presence is there and you're there with them. And so when we're thinking about physical touch specifically, there are some do's and don'ts when it comes to this specific love language. So some of the tips, and Kanai or Jay, if you want to type some of these in the chat box, but some of the tips to try. So if you know that your partner or your friend or your siblings or your parents, if you know that their love language is physical touch, some things to try are, like I said, hugging or reaching out a hand, putting your arm around them, embracing them. But to be honest, when we're talking about physical touch in the mindset of the love languages, we're thinking more along the lines of like non-sexual touch. So it's more of like hand holding, grabbing their arm, holding, putting your arm around their shoulders, giving them a hug, things like that. So another thing is massages, initiating intimacy. So maybe you, like I said, hug, things like kiss, things like that. But it's more along the lines of just like your presence and being there. Things to avoid. Try to avoid long periods of time without intimacy, without touching. Also try to avoid coldly giving affection or giving affection that is like half, like half paying attention. So with physical touch, like they want your partner, the other person wants to know that you're there with them. And so instead of just like casually giving them physical touch, you want to make sure you're 100% in it with them. Waiting for your partner to express their desire for that physical affection. So don't wait until they ask for it. You want to make sure that you're giving this to them periodically. The next one is words of affirmation. Can anybody tell me what the definition of that would be? Type in chat box or unmute.
I'd say encouraging words.
Yep, encouraging words. CW said saying I love you. So yeah. So words of affection are verbal compliments that express your love and appreciation for the other person. So for this one, tips to try, leaving encouraging notes, creating a playlist of songs that remind you of them, sharing sentiments for your partner's success, struggles, complimenting them, and words of affirmation, appreciation. And then things to avoid, assuming that they know how loved they are, or assuming that they know how proud of you or how proud you are of them. And then emotionally harsh words and not recognizing or appreciating their efforts. So this is more of like the physical touch was nonverbal, whereas this is going to be verbal. So that is for words of affirmation. The next one is quality time. Anybody want to tell me what the definition of quality time is, or what you think it is?
I'll go. So to me, quality time is like the intentional present attention that you give to whoever you value. So your parent, your sibling, your friends, or your significant other, just showing like, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm not on my phone, I'm not distracted, I care about you.
Exactly. So yes, the definition for quality time is focused and undivided attention spent together. So that's the key point, that it's undivided attention, but you're doing these things together. So tips to try for this one: being mentally present when you're with them, making plans to go on adventures, explore new places, uninterrupted times, like Ross said, like putting away your phone, making eye contact, sitting with this person, creating small moments to connect with one another, and then quality and deep conversation. People that their love language is quality time, that's really important, that you're talking to them and not at them. And then also when they're speaking to you, you're giving them your full attention versus like looking down on your phone and then looking up and being like, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. So it's really being in the moment with them. And then things to avoid, like I've kind of already talked about, but being distracted when you're with them, viewing your partner as needy, complaining about time you spend with them, and also preparing for other engagements when you're together. So it goes back to living in the moment. So if you're on a hike with your partner, with a friend, and you're like, oh, I can't wait for dinner tomorrow night with my parents or whatever, like talking about things that are not relative to what's happening in the here and now. So it's just really about remaining present. Which leads me to the next one, receiving gifts. So what do y'all think the definition of that one is? SW, were you gonna say something? Okay. Oh, showing you appreciate them. Yes. So showing you appreciate them through tangible symbols, objects that reflect your thoughtfulness and effort. So it's really about putting a lot of thought behind the gift that you're giving and not just going out the day before or the day of and randomly buying something for the other person. Also, souvenirs when you travel without them, so it shows them that when you purchased this gift, you had them in mind. Gifts that symbolize moments that the two of you have had together. Experiences or feelings, small reminders or tokens when they do not feel their best. And then being intentional on holidays, especially on their birthday. I found that very interesting, thinking about that. So those are tips to try. Just being very intentional with what gifts you're giving, how often you're giving them, the thought behind the gift. And then tips to avoid: forgetting special occasions such as holidays or their birthday. Materialism, it said gifts are not about the cost. The gifts are about the love and the thoughtfulness behind it. So don't give gifts without love or out of duty that you should be giving your partner or your friend gifts. It's more of, I did this because I care about you, I love you, not because I had to do it. So that's for receiving gifts. And then the last one is acts of service. So can anyone define what acts of service is?
I don't know if this is a long shot, but would acts of service include like showing up for them if they have an event or something? Like if they have an occasion and it really means a lot to be supported and you show up, that could be an act of service?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely part of it.
I would say acts of service is like doing something for them. Like I'll pump your gas for you, or I'll cook dinner for you, or I'll draw your bath, like doing something for them. I consider that to be acts of service.
Yes, y'all are both correct. So acts of service is any act that eases the burden of responsibility. So just like Crystal said, it's running a bath for you, cooking for you, but similar to what Rachel said, it's also like, I'm here, I'm supporting you, I'm showing up. And so tips to try for this one is showing rather than telling, following through with what you say you do. So like what Ra said, so if I tell you that I'm going to be at your soccer game tomorrow and then I don't show up, like that's very hurtful to someone who this is their love language. So following through with what you say you're going to do, and then assisting with stressful, time-consuming tasks, like Crystal said, such as cooking, cleaning, things that need to get done, but can often be stressful or a burden. And then being spontaneous, so surprising them at work with flowers, sending them a box of chocolates on a random day, not just because it's Valentine's Day. So doing things out of spontaneity versus because you have to do it because it's a holiday or feeling like you have to do it. Avoid ignoring requests for help. So if your partner's, the other person asks you to do something, make sure that you're not ignoring that. And then also tips to avoid not following through and being closed-minded. So when it comes to task, saying, oh, I can't do that because XYZ. So having those conversations and making sure you're being open-minded. So those are the 5 love languages and the definitions with tips to try and tips to avoid. So now I'm going to give it to Jay.
All right, so now some of you who said you didn't know anything about the 5 love languages, you have a basic understanding. So do you have any questions about anything Miss Stephanie said? CW, does that represent you do have a question? If so, ask, unmute your mic or ask in the chat. Okay, well, now that you've gotten all this information about the love languages, we're going to give you an opportunity to figure out what your love language is. So in the chat box, I am posting a link. So I want you to click on this link. The test isn't long, it's a quiz for you to figure out what your which of the love languages is the one that's for you. When you're done with that, just type done in the chat box so then we can move on to the next part of the activity, and I will play some music while y'all do that. How's everyone doing with their test? I see CW, SW, EA, you all are done. Miss Stephanie, I see you're done. You did it too. And Soma, Ra or Crystal, were y'all taking it?
Ra's done, so it's easy.
Oh, Ra and BZ. Okay, you're done. All right, so now that you have taken the quiz and you see what the quiz says, your love language, did the results of the quiz differ from earlier when you were asked to predict what your love language would be? Answer in the chat box or unmute your mic.
I did not answer earlier, but I'm not surprised with my results. I'm very much into love languages, so I kind of already knew what it was, but mine is quality time.
Quality time, okay. EA, what did you guess that yours was in the beginning? Same question for CW and SW. I'm sorry.
What was the question?
I want to know what y'all guessed in the beginning versus what you got when you took the quiz.
Oh, I said quality time the first time, and on the quiz, I also got quality time.
Okay. What about you, EA?
words of affirmation.
All right, and BZ, what about you?
Well, I thought mine was going to be acts of service, but it was actually quality time. So that's what I got.
Okay. And Miss Stephanie, you said yours differed. What did you guess at first, and what did the quiz say?
So I've actually taken this before, and I always think words of affirmation. So the first time I took it, I got words of affirmation. This time I got quality time. So I'm probably a little bit of both, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. And so what about the love languages? Like when you guessed your love language and you got the results of your love language, what about yourself made you think you were a specific kind of love language? Roz is the same.
I'll go. Wait, repeat that before I start talking, because I don't want to go off on a tangent.
What about yourself made you believe that you were a certain type of love language, or you fit into what the quiz said your love language was? Like,
Gotcha.
what kind of things do you do that make you relate to it?
I enjoy being present with people and having deeper conversations, like deeper below the surface, not just like, oh, how was your day? Good. Like, no, I want to know, like, how was your day? Like I'm that one that's gonna dig deeper. And when I'm with people, I definitely try to reach for those, just, I don't know, those moments where it's below the surface. So I think while taking the quiz, I wasn't surprised. I was like, yeah, that's me. I was like, yep, quality time. Like every time I was selecting the options that they were giving us. But yeah, I think just me being a type of person that just kind of lives in that moment and is present in that moment definitely relates and reflects quality time. So.
Okay. Anyone else want to answer?
I do.
Okay.
I guess it's because of my low self-esteem that I have to be reassured, and that's why I have like words of affirmation.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of qualities, other aspects and areas in our life that definitely contribute to why we are a specific type of, we have the specific type of love language that we have. So my next question for you is, do you think it's more important to know your own love language or your partner or friend's love language, and why or why not?
I would say that I think it's both. I would say it's important to know my own so that when I meet new people and I am building a relationship with them, whether it's platonic or romantic, both of them, that's what Crystal said, both of them. I think it's important to be able to know how we're going to blend or how we're going to butt heads, because if I really, really value quality time, but that's not something that they care about because they're just much more interested in getting gifts, then maybe we don't have the same priorities. And maybe that's something we can talk through, or maybe it's something that we need to kind of part ways about. But either way, being able to know myself and then know my person, whether friendship or romantically, helps me to know how to support us.
I agree with you, and I agree that it's both. It was from personal experience, one of the challenges when figuring out love languages and being with a person and understanding their love language versus my love language, like how they want to receive love versus how I want to receive love, because I'm not a person who's the physical touch person. Like, I'm not a physical touch person. So naturally, I tend to give love the way that I want to receive love. And with love languages is understanding that we need to give people the love they love them how they want to be loved, you know, whether it's in friendships, family, and things like that, in order for them to feel appreciated. And then in return, if they understand my love language, then they can, you know, reciprocate in a way that makes me, you know, feel loved. So like if mine was gifts, then I can't just throw a bunch of gifts at people and expect them to feel love, because that's not theirs, that's mine. So yeah.
Yes, you hit it right on the nail with that, boss. Like, I think that takes a certain level of love to understand and just sacrifice. Like, it might be uncomfortable for you, but if you know that's like your partner or your friend or whatever the relationship is, say their love language is physical touch, you know, like greeting them with a hug when they come through the door, or that might be a little uncomfortable for you, but knowing that that's your partner or your friend or whoever's love language, that takes sacrifice, you know, like that's hard to do. So I think that's very true, and something that we should all just keep in mind, is that the way that we want to be loved isn't always the way our friends want to be loved. So I agree with that 100%, Jay.
I think something that came up for me while I was taking the quiz was both answers. So I was like, oh, I like this and I like that too, but I had to go with like the most accurate answer. I guess that's how you would say that. And so that's, once I took it and I got quality time, which is not what I thought I was going to get, I understood that it could have probably been words of affirmation, because I was drawn to both answers a lot of times, but then I would just pick one because I had to pick one out of the two. So I think that's something to think about too, is like you can have multiple love languages, which in turn might make things a little bit more complicated, but that's okay. If you want to receive love in multiple ways, that's okay too. So
yeah, I think it's like it's a fact that most women have multiple love languages, and typically men have maybe like one or two, but across the board it's natural for women to have more than one. So, because I was in the same predicament, like, okay, well, I like both of these. So which one do I like most? So it's kind of hard to pick, but yeah, you can definitely have more than one. I think that's, like you kind of said, it can be difficult, but it's also kind of cool too, you know?
that makes me feel better, Crystal. Thank you.
Yeah, also it's important to point out that, you know, throughout our lives, we are just fluid beings. So whatever, you know, you took the test today and it said that you are this, that doesn't mean that 5 years from now, you're going to be the same love language. I mean, because life is a process of growing and healing, and you know, you might think you're this love language based on some attachment disorder or, you know, traumas and things like that, and once you heal and grow and evolve from those things, then you might be like, oh, you know what, I actually do like physical touch more than I thought. So be open to evolving, and as Crystal said, evolution over here, as you grow and continue to learn in life and in love.
So for me, I got quality time, but it makes me think like career wise and like the bigger picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Cause like when it comes to students, I'm not physically touching them, you know, it's more of I'm listening, observing. So that just made me think like, oh, cause I thought I was physical. I'm a hugger, y'all. I like to hug, you know, so it's very interesting, but it's nice to know, like Crystal said, that there's two, because my percentages were very close. So quality time got a little bit more, and then physical touch was next.
So the next thing that I want y'all to do, we talked about, y'all predicted someone else's love language, so a friend or a partner or a parent or a sibling. So we're not going to do this on the call, but I would love for y'all to go, if you're able to, and have a conversation with that person and tell them what you predicted for them. So I know someone said like their sister they thought was quality time. So maybe having a conversation with your sister and saying, hey, like I think that you, out of the 5 love languages, you identify the most with quality time, but then having them take that quiz or have that conversation, and maybe they're going to be like, no, mine's physical touch or mine's something else. So we want you to have that conversation. And then also when you're talking to that person, if that's something that you're able to do, come up with how their love language and your love language mesh together. I think Rachel said this earlier, but sometimes we meet people and realize that we maybe don't connect as well because of their love language, and maybe those don't mesh. And so looking at how your love language and the person that you predicted their love language, how they go well together, and then also looking at how they might clash with one another and how this might play a role in your relationship with that person. So that's an activity for y'all to do sometime later this week or next week. We're not going to do it on the call, but we just thought that would be interesting, and I wanted to tie those things together. So we'd love to hear your feedback next week if you talk to someone else about their love language.
All right, so we have some closing questions. This was very informative. I hope everyone learned. Make sure you do what Miss Stephanie said. Go talk to your partner, your friend, whoever, and figure out, what love language it is, because this is very helpful. It's very helpful stuff. So the first question is, how can you incorporate your love language in your relationship with others? So how can you incorporate your love language in your relationship with others?
I'll say that I can incorporate my love language of quality time by, like I talked about, showing up for people. I think right now, especially in the time we live in, we're so prepared for people not to be able to be there for us. So if there are safe, healthy ways that I can show up for the people who I value and show them my love through the language that matters to me, as well as through that quality time I spend with them, finding out what their love language is through observing them and asking them questions, kind of like this activity is asking us to do.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? And you could type it in the chat box, unmute.
I think Jay hit the nail on the head earlier when they talked about finding out what your partner or your friend's love language is first in order to know how to love them versus portraying your love language onto someone else. So I think that's really important to have that conversation, no matter who it is, your mom, your dad, your sister, your partner, your brother, doesn't matter. Having those conversations and really listening and finding out how to love that person.
That's great. All right, so next question is, what is one thing you already knew about love languages before this discussion? So give me something you knew about love languages before this discussion. I didn't know much, but it is just interesting how it ties together and how it's also very important, makes sense to find out your partner's or your friends or your family love languages. That way you can adapt to them, not just giving them your love language. So did anyone know anything about love languages before this discussion? I know Ms. Lofton said she, do some things. She's into this. So, all right. So we'll move on to the next question. So name one piece of information you learned today. So since if you may have not known anything about love languages, give me one thing you learned today when it comes to love languages.
I would say the validation that I can have more than one, because I thought also, like Miss Stephanie, that I was supposed to just pick one and I have to fit into that one box, and I like that.
Yes, I love that too.
And in the chat box, we got words of affirmations, and that it can vary.
I feel like I learned that I'm not the type of person to really take words of affirmation to heart. I was never really the type to actually get better when people tell me that it's okay, you'll be fine, or things will get better. I mean, it never really did. each time it gets worse before it gets better. But yeah, I think that's what I learned about love language.
And like we said before, it's good to know what, it's not, what your love language isn't, because that doesn't work for you. So if someone keeps telling you it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, and like you said, stuff doesn't get better, it's kind of like that's just a false hope and that's not working for you. So if you do have someone like that in your life who might do that, just, make sure, now that you learned all that you learned, if they're close to you, you can be like, hey, that just doesn't work for me. But thank you for sharing. And that does make a lot of sense, especially for words of affirmation. But for some people, just that little hope, even if they may not think it's going to get better, someone might be there, and, then they feel like that works for them. So everybody's different. But so anybody else, anything you learned? Any new information? This is kind of not new, but new to me. But I know that, we could dig a lot deeper with this, and I learned a lot today. So this is a good starting point.
I'm going to go ahead and close us out. So if you did not register for this workshop, I think Jay is going to put the link in the chat box. Please make sure you register for this workshop. And then we also have, shout out to Crystal, we have a college and career workshop tomorrow. So be sure and jump on the call for that and register for that as well. And then I know I say this every time, but if you have not taken the pre-test yet, please take that. It'll just be one time today, and then you'll take the post-test at the end of the semester. And then be on the lookout on Instagram for information about She Votes. We're going to be posting about that and upcoming sessions that we're going to have. So please follow us on Instagram, get live accounts, and find out information there. If you need anything from us, you can always message us on Instagram as well, and be sure and do the love language activity with your loved ones so you can find out more about them. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, but other than that, I think we are good for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Y'all for joining.
Thank you.
You're welcome.